My sister's Bridal Registry arrived with a $10,000 oven, designer shoes, and a house fund. I replied, "You've mistaken me for a bank." She said, "Then you're uninvited." So I stayed home. Hours later, she posted that the photographer canceled because my card wasn't on file. The family finally saw who'd been paying all along. And then, when the registry came in, I actually laughed. Not the polite kind, the sharp what the hell looking, a kind of laugh that echoes off the walls when you're home alone. A $10,000 oven. Not even joking. It was Italian. Red. Called something pretentious like La Cucina della Regina. And she wanted it as a gift. From her guests. From me. Like I was a distant aunt with a private yacht. That wasn't even the highlight. There were 4 pairs of designer shoes. Louboutins, Valentinos, even some new brand I'd never heard of but Googled out of morbid curiosity. All between $900 and $1,500. There was a $2,000 wellness retreat package she tagged as post-wedding recovery. And the best part? A house fund that looked sweet and innocent until I clicked the details. The note read, "Kelly, since you didn't throw a bridal shower, we figured this would be easier for you. $5,000 would mean the world to us." Not suggested. Expected. She actually personalized the registry so that specific items were aimed at certain people. Grandma was supposed to buy them a $1,200 espresso machine. My dad a custom wine fridge. Me, the house fund. Because apparently, covering her rent for the last 7 months wasn't generous enough. What made it all worse was that my parents didn't even blink when I showed them. My mom smiled and said, "Oh, Vanessa always had expensive taste." Like that was a good thing. Like I was being difficult for not wanting to drop thousands on a woman who hadn't held a job longer than a carton of eggs lasts in the fridge. And don't even get me started on her fiancé. Mark had 2 jobs in the last year. One he quit because the manager had a power trip. The other fired him for showing up drunk twice. I kept my mouth shut at first, thinking maybe it was stress, maybe he'd pull it together before the wedding. But every time I visited, he was either day drinking or missing entirely. And my sister would just shrug it off like it was cute. He's a free spirit. It wasn't cute when I realized half the wedding vendors were sending their invoices to me. I'm not exaggerating. I paid for the venue deposit, the florist, and the photographer, all thinking I was just helping out a little. Vanessa had been forwarding me emails saying the vendors needed urgent payments, that our parents were handling the rest and it was just a timing issue. I trusted her. I shouldn't have. Then one morning I got an email directly from the photographer. I guess they got confused and thought I was the bride. They asked if I wanted the deluxe photo booth upgrade and reminded me my remaining balance was due the next day. My name. My card. Not hers. So I texted her one line, "You've mistaken me for a bank." Her reply came almost instantly, "Then you're uninvited." That was it. No explanation. No apology. No gratitude. Just exile. I stared at the screen for a while. I didn't even feel hurt, just embarrassed that I'd let it get this far. I screenshotted the text and forwarded it to my parents with zero commentary. Then I locked my cards, canceled the upcoming payments, and booked myself a massage for the day of the wedding. If I was going to be cut out, I was going to be gone. The day of the wedding, I stayed in my robe till noon. It was kind of peaceful in a weird way. My phone was off most of the morning. Around 11 I turned it back on. Dozens of texts started rolling in. I ignored all of them until one from my cousin popped up. All it said was, "Dude, check Vanessa's Instagram." I opened it. She had just posted a photo of her bouquet and captioned it, "Photographer canceled last minute. Crushed. Can't believe this happened." I didn't need to wonder why. Because my card wasn't on file anymore. I'd canceled it the night before. What Vanessa didn't realize was how quickly panic would ripple through the crowd. My absence was already being noticed. But now there was no photographer. The planner was frantically calling backup. The vibe was off. My parents were confused. Guests were whispering. And Vanessa? She refused to say why I wasn't there. She didn't tell them what she'd said. She didn't tell them what she did. Which made it even worse. Because without answers, people started making up their own. By the time the ceremony even started, word had already gotten around that something was off. Not just my absence, that part confused people, but something deeper. You could feel it in the way the wedding planner kept checking her phone every 30 seconds, or how Vanessa's bridesmaids looked like they were trying too hard to act normal. And then there was the photographer. Or the lack of one. It took about 5 minutes before someone asked the question, "Why isn't there anyone taking pictures?" Vanessa brushed it off. She told the guests the photographer had a family emergency. A few people nodded politely. But people talk, especially when they're stuck waiting in rows of chairs while someone's cousin plays off-key violin solos. And when guests talk, they compare stories. And when too many stories don't line up, rumors start. So while Vanessa was walking down the aisle, looking like she was about to receive an Oscar, guests were already whispering about why I wasn't there, and why there wasn't a single camera capturing it. That afternoon, I was sitting on my balcony with a coffee and my phone on silent, watching the wind pick up in little waves through the trees. Peaceful. Detached. Not trying to make a scene, but definitely done pretending I was the villain for not continuing to finance someone else's delusions. At 3:17 p.m. I turned my phone back on. 6 missed calls. 11 texts. The one that stood out was from my cousin Emily. She said you didn't show because you were unstable about not being maid of honor. That made me laugh out loud. Vanessa didn't even have a maid of honor. Said it was too much pressure for one person. What she really meant was, no one wanted to do the work. I'd already said no months ago, after she told me she needed me to help plan the wedding but wouldn't feel comfortable with me standing beside her in the photos because we didn't match the aesthetic. I paid for the flowers. Apparently, I wasn't aesthetic enough for the pictures. What Emily didn't know, what no one at the wedding knew, was that Vanessa hadn't just forgotten to invite me. She had deliberately uninvited me when I refused to drop $5,000 into her house fund, and told her I wasn't paying another invoice unless someone else stepped up. Her response? She told me I was too negative to be around right now, and said it would be better for everyone if I didn't come. I screenshotted it, sent it to our parents, and waited. My mom finally called at 4:12 p.m., right as the reception was starting. I let it ring out. She called again. This time I picked up. She didn't even say hello. Just asked me where I was and why Vanessa looked like she was about to cry in the bridal suite. I told her to ask Vanessa why I wasn't there, and hung up. 15 minutes later, everything imploded. The photographer showed up. Not to take pictures. No, she came to deliver paperwork in person. She walked into the reception with a black folder, went straight up to my dad, and handed him a copy of the unpaid invoice, stapled to the cancelled contract. And she said right in front of the wedding party, "Just returning this. Unfortunately, we had to cancel due to a declined card on file. It was under the name Kelly Sloan. I assume that's someone in the family." The silence afterward was like a dropped glass. My dad asked her to stay. Not to work, but to explain everything. She told him she'd been emailing me directly for months. That Vanessa had never even communicated with her after the initial introduction. That every upgrade, every payment, every reschedule had gone through me. Guests started paying attention. You could see people leaning in trying to figure out what was happening. Vanessa was still pretending to mingle with guests, but now she was doing that thing where her smile looked like it was stapled to her face. One of the groomsmen apparently tried to pull her aside and warn her. She waved him off. My cousin texted me again. "Your dad looks like he's going to explode." And then my phone rang. It was him. I stepped inside to take it. He asked me one question. "How much have you paid for this wedding?" I didn't sugarcoat it. I gave him numbers. Venue deposit. Floral design. Photographer. Catering down payment. Bridal suite. Dress alteration. It added up to just under $14,000. There was a long pause. Then he said, "We're having a family meeting tomorrow. This ends now." And he hung up. Back at the wedding, everything was unraveling. Vanessa couldn't answer any of their questions. Not about the photographer. Not about the missing money. Not about why I wasn't there. And since she refused to tell the truth, the family started creating their own versions. Some thought I was sick. Others guessed we'd had a falling out. One of my uncles said he heard Vanessa had tried to cut Kelly out to keep attention on herself. What no one could deny was that something was very, very wrong. And for the first time in years, people were starting to ask why Vanessa always seemed to be the one surrounded by chaos, while I was the one cleaning it up. The morning after the wedding, I woke up to 7 missed calls. 3 from my dad. 1 from my mom. The rest were numbers I didn't recognize. Probably relatives I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly interested in catching up now that the family's favorite daughter had stumbled in front of a live audience. At 8:07 a.m. my dad finally texted, "Come over. Family meeting. Vanessa will be there." I stared at it for a minute, then texted back one word. When I walked into the living room, everyone was already seated. My dad arms crossed. My mom unusually quiet. Vanessa on the far end of the couch, still in full makeup from the night before, eyes puffy but defiant. And sitting next to her, barely able to keep his eyes open, was Mark, her brand new husband. He reeked of whatever he'd been drinking at the after party. No one said anything for a few seconds. Then my dad nodded at me. I started small. Just the basics. Timeline. Expenses. Receipts. Names of vendors. Emails. Screenshots. I handed over printed copies of the most important ones and watched my parents slowly piece together the full picture, that they hadn't paid for the wedding. I had. Quietly. Reluctantly. Completely. Then I added one more thing. She uninvited me when I said I couldn't keep paying. Said it was better for everyone if I stayed home. My mom turned to Vanessa and asked if it was true. Vanessa didn't even try to deny it. She just shrugged and said, she made everything so stressful. I didn't want drama on my wedding day. Mark, still barely awake, muttered something about how I'd always been jealous and how Vanessa was just trying to have her moment. That's when my dad stood up. And I've never seen him look more disappointed in his life. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't yell. He just looked at both of them and said, you took advantage of your sister. And you lied to us. And now you're going to fix it. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Mark tried to laugh it off. But no one else was laughing. That's when my grandfather walked in. No one had expected him. He wasn't even at the wedding. Hadn't been feeling well. But apparently he'd heard enough from my aunt that he decided to drive over and sit in. He walked with a cane now, but his voice was still sharp. He looked at Vanessa and said, if Kelly hadn't paid for everything, none of this would have happened. You'd have had a courthouse wedding at best. Then he turned to my parents and added, you funded a lie. And you let her drag Kelly down with her. The room was silent. Then my grandmother, who had been sitting quietly by the fireplace, spoke up, we want our gift back. The check we gave you too, we want it returned. Mark sat up straight. What? That's not fair. But my dad cut him off. Fair? You let someone else pay for your wedding while you drank your way through the planning. You've never held a job longer than 2 months. And now you want to cash in on everyone's generosity like you earned it. Then he turned back to Vanessa. You're not getting another cent. No more rent. No more favors. No more covering for you. If you want to stay married to him, fine. But you're paying your own bills now. You will both get jobs. Or you're out of this house. Vanessa tried to cry. Tried to spin it. Blamed the stress. Said I was too cold. That I'd been distant since childhood. That it wasn't all her fault. No one bought it. The golden child narrative shattered. Right there. In front of 3 generations. The family had finally seen what I'd known for years. And the person they used to see as a fragile little flower now just looked like a leech. After the meeting at my parents' house, things went quiet. Uncomfortably quiet. Vanessa went back to pretending nothing had happened. My parents didn't speak to her for the rest of the day. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. Messy fallout, family drama, lesson learned. But the real story hadn't even started. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 6:43 a.m. It was my grandmother. She never calls that early. I answered immediately. Her voice was calm, but there was something in it I hadn't heard before. Kelly, sweetheart. I need you to come over. Now. 20 minutes later, I was sitting at her kitchen table, still in a hoodie and coffee barely settling in my system. My grandfather was there too, wearing his reading glasses, holding a small black checkbook I recognized instantly. Their household checkbook. The kind that had little floral corners on the pages and still smelled faintly of her perfume. Grandpa opened it and laid it flat in front of me. One check was missing. Check number 1183. Torn out. Gone. But Grandma had found the bank withdrawal on their statement the night before. She thought it was strange. $4,500 withdrawn just days before the wedding. Grandpa hadn't remembered writing anything that large. So they called the bank. Got a copy. When she slid the printout across the table, I felt my stomach drop. The check was made out to Vanessa Sloan. The memo line read wedding costs. And the signature in slanted shaky letters read, R. Sloan. But it wasn't my grandfather's handwriting. Not even close. He showed me a side-by-side. His real signature was crisp and tight from decades of writing checks for everything from lawn service to tax prep. The one on the forged check looked like someone tried to copy it from memory and gave up halfway through. She'd done it. Vanessa had forged a check from our grandfather's account. While he was in the other room. I couldn't wrap my head around it at first. I'd known she was entitled. Manipulative. Lazy. But this was stealing. From the 2 people who loved her unconditionally. Who would have given her the money if she'd just asked. Who sat at every birthday, every graduation or failed attempt at one. Smiling and clapping and pretending they weren't heartbroken. They'd filed a fraud report with the bank. The check was being investigated. The funds were already frozen. The only reason they hadn't told my parents yet was because they were giving Vanessa one last chance to come clean. But I knew she wouldn't. Back home I didn't call her. I didn't send a message. I needed to let her dig her own hole. Later that day my mom called me in a low voice. Said Vanessa had come back home, alone. No mark. No wedding ring. No excuses. Said they'd gotten into a fight and she was re-evaluating everything. My mom didn't sound sympathetic. Just tired. Apparently, Mark had shown up to a job interview, one Vanessa begged a friend to arrange, still hungover. Maybe still drunk. He passed out in the car while she was inside trying to salvage what was left of their already embarrassing marriage. He didn't even answer her texts. When she came outside, he was snoring with the engine running. That night she walked out. Took a bag, a charger, and nothing else. I thought that would be the rock bottom. I was wrong. 2 days later, I was making dinner when someone knocked at my door. I looked through the peephole and froze. It was Vanessa. No heels. No designer coat. No lashes. She was wearing a gray hoodie, no makeup, hair pulled back in a way I hadn't seen since we were teenagers. She looked like someone who hadn't slept. For the first time in forever, she looked like my sister. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't try to hug me. She just stood there and said, "I did something really stupid. And now I think I've ruined everything." I didn't answer. She looked down at her shoes. Mark's not who I thought he was. I don't even know what I was trying to prove. I think I just didn't want to admit I'd messed it all up. But I did. I messed it up. Then she looked at me again. "Can you help me leave him? For real this time?" I waited. Long enough for the weight of her words to sit in the air. Then I nodded once and stepped aside to let her in. We didn't talk about the money yet. Or the forged check. Not that night. But I could see it in her face. She knew I knew. Vanessa spent the night in my guest room, and for the first time in years the house felt calm. No chaos, no begging calls from her, no drama over who said what to whom. Just silence, the kind you get after a storm passes and all the noise has finally drained out of the sky. When I woke up, I half expected to find her gone. But there she was, sitting at the kitchen table in one of my old college sweatshirts, hands wrapped around a mug she'd clearly been holding for a while. She didn't say good morning. She didn't ask for anything. She just looked up and said, "I'm done with him. Really done." I didn't say anything right away. I just waited. She started talking, not in that usual performance voice she used when she wanted sympathy, but like someone who had finally run out of illusions to hide behind. She said the wedding meant nothing now. That once it was over, once she looked around and realized how empty it all felt without me there, something cracked. Mark had embarrassed her at the job interview. Not just by being late. Or drunk. But by showing up in a wrinkled shirt, slurring his words, and then yelling at her when she asked him not to light a cigarette inside her friend's car. He had screamed at her in the parking lot while people watched from inside the building. It was humiliating. That night she packed a bag and left. She stayed with a friend for 2 days, then came to me. Not because she wanted money, she didn't ask for a cent, but because she said she needed to see me. The sister she'd thrown under a bus and expected to keep driving. And then just like that she confessed. I forged Grandpa's check. No build-up. No excuses. Just the truth. She told me how she did it, how she waited until he left the room, ripped out the check quietly, practiced his signature in the margins, then cashed it the same day. Said she cried on the drive home, but convinced herself it didn't count as stealing because she would have paid it back eventually. I told her the truth. The bank had already flagged it. The account was frozen. They knew. Everyone knew. Her face dropped. And then she asked something I'll never forget. "Do they hate me now?" I told her no. But I also told her that didn't mean they'd keep shielding her. Love isn't the same as rescue. That afternoon she asked if we could go together. To see Grandma and Grandpa. She didn't want to make another scene. She didn't want anyone else there. Just them, just me. So we drove in silence. When we walked in, Grandma looked her in the eyes and said, "Vanessa, I'm glad you came." She didn't hug her. Neither did Grandpa. But they sat with her. And they listened. And she apologized. Not the fake kind. Not the half-hearted ones she used to hand out like receipts. This one was real. She cried. He admitted it all. And then she pulled a folded cashier's check from her purse, $4,500, and slid it across the table. She said it was all she had left and she was giving it back. No strings. No bargaining. They took it. Quietly. Respectfully. And then Grandma said, "It means more that you gave it back than you can understand." Later that evening, back at my place, she said something else I didn't expect. "I want to annul the marriage." Apparently, the marriage license hadn't even been finalized. It was sitting in a drawer and signed. She hadn't mailed it in. Said she just couldn't bring herself to seal it. Like a part of her knew it was all a performance. The next morning, she made an appointment and filed for annulment. Mark didn't take it well. He showed up at my parents' door half-drunk, demanding to talk to her. My dad stepped outside, said one thing, "This is over," and shut the door. They haven't seen him since. Over the next week, Vanessa started job hunting. Nothing fancy. Just real work. She applied to a bakery, a customer service rep job, and a local bookstore. One called her back. She showed up early. She wore clean clothes. She got hired. Minimum wage, part-time. But it was hers. And the family? They started seeing her differently. Not proudly. Not warmly. But with a kind of cautious respect. She'd made a mess. A massive one. But she'd started cleaning it up herself. And then 3 nights later she came over again. Sat at the same kitchen table where she once mocked me for budgeting my groceries. She looked at me and said, "I know I owe you more than money. I know what I did probably broke something in you. But I don't want our relationship to be about that anymore. I want to earn back your trust. Not by saying it but by showing it. Every week. However long it takes." And then she reached into her bag and pulled out a wrinkled notebook. Inside were her plans. Weekly budget. Debt tracker. A job schedule. Even a side hustle idea. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything sentimental. I just nodded. And then I told her something I hadn't planned to say out loud. "You don't have to pay me back. Not because you don't owe it, but because I don't want our relationship to be built on debt. I want it to be built on truth." She looked at me for a long time then whispered, "Hey, then I'll give you that instead." The final update. 3 months. That's how long it took for everything to settle. Not perfectly but enough to breathe again. Vanessa stayed with our parents. Not as a princess on a pillow but as a tenant with rules. She cooked. She cleaned. She paid rent. She got up every morning at 5:30, made coffee in silence, and caught the 6:10 bus to the bookstore job that paid just enough for groceries, phone, and a modest contribution to the house. It wasn't glamorous but it was real. And it was hers. The girl who once demanded $5,000 from me on a wedding registry was now budgeting her toothpaste. The sister who once said work was for people who lacked big energy was now clocking overtime during author signing events and learning how to track inventory with a clipboard and a highlighter. The most shocking part, she liked it. Said the work made her feel like her life had weight for the first time. Like she wasn't floating between excuses and favors. Like she wasn't waiting for someone else to rescue her anymore. I saw the change slowly, not all at once. It wasn't some dramatic redemption arc. Just little things. Like how she'd call and ask me what brand of olive oil to buy. Or text photos of her trying on second-hand coats and genuinely being proud of spending under $30. She even asked to borrow my crock pot, not indefinitely, just for the week. And when she returned it, it was cleaner than when she got it. I didn't trust it at first. Not fully. I kept waiting for the old Vanessa to come back. The version that smiled sweet and reached for my wallet. But she didn't. She kept showing up quietly. Honestly. One evening, our mom told me Vanessa had started visiting Grandma and Grandpa on her own. Once a week. No agenda. Just sitting with Grandpa in the backyard and letting him ramble about tomatoes and arthritis. Sometimes they didn't even talk. He just sat there. Listened. It meant more to them than anything she'd ever said with words. And the family? They shifted too. My dad pulled me aside during a Sunday lunch and said without any lead-in, "We should have seen it sooner. We won't forget again." My mom started deflecting praise about Vanessa, redirecting it to me. Said things like, "Kelly was the one holding the rope while the rest of us were pretending there wasn't a cliff." Even our cousins, who once treated me like the uptight older sibling who didn't know how to let things go, started asking me for advice. About budgeting. About boundaries. About what really happened. They wanted the truth. And for once they were ready to hear it. But the moment everything finally clicked wasn't with the family. It was with Vanessa. She came over one Thursday night after work. No announcement. No reason. Just a grocery bag and a tired smile. Inside were things she thought I'd like. A candle that smelled like cinnamon and smoke, a loaf of bread she'd baked at the bookstore, and 2 cans of soup she'd made herself. She said she'd started meal prepping. Said it helped her feel like she was building something. Then she handed me an envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper and her first 3 paycheck stubs. I looked at her confused. She said, "I know you said I didn't have to pay you back. But I need to. Not for you. For me." She had circled $50 on each stub. Not much. But consistent. She'd been setting it aside. "Call it dignity, call it healing, call it whatever you want," she said. "But this is me owning what I did. And undoing it slowly." I didn't fight her. I didn't make it emotional. I just nodded. And told her I was proud. Then I handed her something I'd been saving. A letter I wrote but never sent. It detailed everything. The hurt. The exhaustion. The anger. And, eventually, the hope. She read it quietly all the way through. Then folded it, placed it back in the envelope and said, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I said, "Maybe not. But you're earning it anyway." We sat on the couch. Shared soup. Watched a movie we used to love when we were kids. No drama. No apologies. Just 2 sisters, tired, trying, and finally, honest with each other. She left around midnight. Before she did, she turned and said, "Hey, thank you for letting me come back, even if I had to walk through fire to do it." I said, "You didn't walk through fire. You burned the whole place down and helped rebuild it from the ashes. There's a difference." She laughed. And it wasn't fake. For the first time in a long time, Vanessa wasn't someone I had to protect others from. He was just my sister. Flawed. Bernie. Standing on her own 2 feet. And for the first time ever, our relationship wasn't a ledger. It was a second chance.